Welcome to Third Eye Africa TV. My name is Ben Shamang, and we want to look at safety in Nigeria, especially when we talk about fire incidents here and there. In Lagos of recent, we could see some people virtually or almost jumping down from story buildings because fire was under and they were up there. They needed to come down. So what is the role of some agencies in terms of ensuring that psychologically people remain calm? That also, while building, what are the safety measures that should be on ground to ensure that Nigerians or indeed every other person is safe? What about the property and all that stuff? Are there agents outside the Federal Fire Service doing their jobs the way they ought to be? We want to look at many of these things and more. Like I said, once again, welcome to Third Eye Africa TV. And I have a guest who will do justice to all of that. I can see that the studio, the floor is all red, and we are discussing fire. I want to welcome Barrister Paul Abraham. He is the Deputy Controller, Federal Fire Service in Abuja. You're welcome to Third Eye Africa TV.
Thank you, Mr. Shamang.
Yes, fire. We've seen them so many, even in markets and all that stuff. I mean, is your agency ready at all times to fight fire in Nigeria?
That's a very good question, Mr. Shamang. Thank you for having me. Is the Federal Fire Service ready to fight fire at all times in Nigeria? The answer is a capital yes. We have a mandate that is centered around fire prevention, fire mitigation, and fire extinguishment. And that mandate is not a mandate that we're toying with. We're doing everything within available resources to not just fight fire, because like it's always said, fire prevention is cheaper, it's easier, it's safer than firefighting. So we start from prevention, and then we go to mitigation, and then where the need arises, we move into extinguishment.
Okay,
we are ever ready, Mr. Shamang.
So let's look at, to get set to go for a fire fighting incident, for example. What is it you have on ground that when that call is made, then we just hear the siren?
Okay, what is it we have on ground so that when the call is made, you just hear the siren? First and foremost, we must all understand that Nigerians, and maybe the world over, that firefighting is one of the corporate social responsibility of government. We do not generate income at the moment, so all we do is provide, safety or fire cover for Nigerians. What do we have on ground? I'd like to say here that the Federal Fire Service, for example, is in all the states of the Federation. Okay, we have command in all the states of the Federation. In some states, we have even moved into senatorial districts. Okay, and then within metropolis and city centers, we have various outposts or fire stations. Okay, so what is it we have on ground? We have our resources on ground, when we get the call, that we immediately deploy our men, our machines, our tools, and of course, our extinguishing elements. Sometimes foam compounds, as the case may be.
Now, let's look at a recent scenario in Lagos. Like we said in our opening remarks, you could see that, workers were trapped upstairs, almost a 6-story building or so, and the fire was ground floor, Tell me how rescue takes place within that scenario. Supposing it's a 12-story building, a 20-story building, how do you rescue this kind of people? Fire is down there, so hot, flames, smoke here and there. How do you rescue them?
Okay, so for the Afriland, I guess that's what you're talking about. Right now, investigations are ongoing, and very soon we'll understand the remote and actual cause of that incident. But speculations, and from what we have gathered so far, the fire started at the inverter and battery room at the basement, which of course our men were able to curtail to that point. Now, when there's fire or there's a need for rescue, interestingly, at the Federal Fire Service, one of our mandates is also search and rescue. So it's a mandate that we take very seriously. So we can rescue from the well, we can rescue from high-rise buildings, we can rescue people that are trapped, in accidented vehicles and all that. And we have various implements for that purpose. Our cutting tools, our ladders, our cranes, our hydraulic platforms. These are all resources we can deploy, for rescue purposes. And of course, our ambulances, the basic life support ambulances. These are all tools or machines that we can deploy at any given time. Now, for those who may be trapped upstairs, 6th floor, 7th floor, like you have mentioned, we have a hydraulic platform that can go as far as 12 floors, and then from there we can evacuate people from the window. And then we also have ladders. So one of the things we do at the Federal Fire Service or every fire service organization is that we do ladder drills. The essence of that ladder is of course for rescue purposes. So the professional, their skills deployed, in that ladder rescue. But we're able to deploy ladders, hydraulic platform, cranes, and then our men, of course, who are trained for that purpose, will definitely rescue those who are trapped.
Now, psychologically, let's look at the same people who are trapped. Here you are, everyone now trying to rush throughout one single window, because sometimes you could have 6 windows, but some people will just feel, since Mr. A or Mrs. A has gone out through this one window, every other person is rushing at that window. Now, at that point, psychologically, how do you manage those people?
You see, now you're talking about preparedness or response, in the heat of this disaster or crisis, as the case may be, And for me, or professionally, I will tell you that it's about preparedness. These things don't just fall from the sky. That's why we have evacuation drills, we have stimulation drills, and then we have fire trainings, rescue trainings, and all of that. Conventionally, what is expected is that for every high-rise building or any building, within the public space that has a large occupancy number. When we talk about occupancy number, we're talking about number of people, that are in that building at every given time. You need to stimulate these situations. You need to carry out evacuation drill from time to time. So this will be a call to Nigerians, facility managers, property owners who have these massive space, that has very large occupancy number, to engage the Federal Fire Service. A simple letter, a simple request to the agency. We will deploy our men who will, take you through, these stimulations, these evacuation drills, as the case may be. It is only when that is done that people can be stable in the heat of crisis. Without that, everybody is like a jungle. So everybody is now fighting for survival. But once you have these know-how, you then understand, okay, there's a muster point, there's an emergency exit, okay? And then nobody should try jumping through the window. All you need to do is, if it's a situation that is now beyond your control, you cannot use the staircase. You should never use the lift where there's such an emergency, because you could get trapped. So you normally will use the staircase. But if you cannot, then you should go to the window and try to call attention, wave a flag, wave a shirt, shout, say something. And then, of course, once we are there, we now know that, okay, we have somebody here, we have somebody there, and then we begin to now take steps, for the rescue. And of course, if it's on the 7th floor, 8th floor, you should also have ropes.
Now, you see, talking of safety, and you've just mentioned public buildings, about some months or a year ago in London, for example, there was this huge fire that engulfed people. They were assured of safety, being rescued, and they were busy snapping, taking photos, broadcasting live in the social media, and the fire actually met them there. They died. Now, we've seen situation in Nigeria where big story buildings, very tall, with the advent of computers, big tables are now being used to block exit routes, just leaving one. I mean, what kind of awareness is being done in such areas, for example?
Well, I think one of the major prevention model in public space, even in your private homes, is housekeeping. And so this issue that you have touched on now borders around housekeeping. Okay, so exits and emergency exits, and emergency exits are not where we should go and block with used items or bad furnitures, or even a car, as the case may be. Those exits needs to be allowed. Apart from the fact that such emergency exit exists, we should also designate it. Let people know clearly that this is the emergency exit. So every time you're on a high-rise building, having meetings or having programs, they must read out the safety measures. They must tell people the protocol. Okay, we're on the 7th floor, in a conference hall, there are 2 emergency exits, just the same way you experience when you get on board an aircraft. And as to the campaign, we are up and about, telling Nigerians through several media. This is one of it, for example, through the radios, through televisions, through flyers, through social media, and even road shows, telling Nigerians what to do and how to do proper housekeeping so that when fire or any emergency occurs, our level of response will be commendable.
Now, let us look at some hotels, some buildings, even security agencies. You just see that they have one gate in, the exit gate is blocked, locked, in fact, chained. And you even have some physical blocks blocking them. Now, on the event of emergency, how do you handle evacuations of this nature?
No, it's obviously, Mr. Shaman, from what you're saying, it's obvious that something is wrong. Okay? And so I must commend the effort that the service is now putting in place. The Controller General has mandated a task force, which will be rolled out not too long from now. Their responsibility is to go and audit public buildings. Firstly, because we're looking at occupancy level, go and audit public building, go and do a risk assessment. I mean, it is not civilized, for lack of a better word, to have, an exit gate that is under lock and key. If anything happens, definitely people will be trapped. So we hope that when this task force goes out, those are the issues that you have to confront property owners, facility managers, safety officers with. So for no reason should any emergency or alternative gates into a public space be locked. Well, sometimes we hear issues around security. They say, for security reasons, it's only one gate in, one gate out. But it will be safer, to say that in spite of the security reasons, it will be safer to man the gate than to lock it. So evacuation is going to be very difficult where there's only one in and out. And then we encourage Nigerians, please man the gates, but make sure that those alternative gates, or emergency exits, are allowed to function, because we don't know the day that this emergency will finally come.
Now, we've seen that in terms of firefighting, emergencies, in some countries at the international level, they say call 999 for emergencies. Now, in the case of Nigerian firefighters, are we supposed to be calling 999, or there is a number specifically for Nigerians?
Of course, there is a national emergency number in Nigeria, which is 112. Okay? That's the national emergency number.
112.
112. This emergency is all encompassing, whether it's fire, whether it's flood, whether it's accident, whether it's security issues, whatever the issue is, you just call 112 and then they route you based on your request to the appropriate agency. However, the Federal Fire Service will also have a mobile phone number, which we refer to as the control room number. The control room number, when reached, is based at the headquarters in Abuja, but we're able to deploy the nearest fire station, or the nearest station for the purpose of rescue or firefighting. And that number is 080-3200-3557. That's the control room number of Federal Fire Service. 080-3200-3557. And of course, the national emergency number 112. So the national emergency number, normally when you call it, they will ask you what kind of emergency you're facing, and then they route. A lot of times people, that interchange, people experience drop calls, but if you have the control room number, like I said, 080-3200-3557, you're just one phone call away from us.
So you are telling us, or telling Nigerians, that if they call this number in Lagos or call in Maiduguri and Sokoto, it's the same number.
Call from anywhere in Nigeria is the same number. Once you call, we'll ask you what the situation is, where you're calling from, and we'll deploy the nearest fire station to you.
Okay. Now, let's look at some legal aspects. We're talking about the National Assembly, we're talking about the building codes, for example. There's supposed to be a code for the Federal Fire Service.
Of course, there's the National Building Code.
Yes. So basically, the contents?
Yeah, content is to give description and direction, and of course, compliance with what every building must have, what every building must do, either before you build or when you build, and all of that. That's the content of the building.
Okay, so before you build, what is it that firefighting agency will be looking at?
We'll be looking at your design. Okay, we have a department called Plans and Examination. So you bring in your plans for examination. So we examine your plans, we examine the occupancy level. Of course, we looked out for the emergency exits. We want to also know the kind of materials that you're using, the kind of material, how highly inflammable or other, how much pressure to heat or fire can they endure? Maybe the doors, the windows, the roofing sheets and all of that.
Okay, so in terms of this implementation of this code, to what extent will you say Fire Federal Service is already engaged in ensuring that there is compliance?
Well, quite frankly, Mr. Shamang, at the level of the Federal Fire Service, we have a challenge. We have the 1963 Act, which we have been working assiduously.
That was when I was born.
Interesting. Okay, so we have the 1963 Act, which the Honorable Minister and the Controller General have been working assiduously to get the National Assembly to amend. In fact, I think it's even a repeal, because we're looking at a Federal Fire and Rescue Act. Right now there's a bill before the National Assembly, and I believe that all hands are on deck. The National Assembly are doing all to cooperate with us so that we can have a brand new law. Of course, so that contemporary issues will be properly articulated and captured. And then most importantly, Mr. Shamang, that the Federal Fire Service will have the powers to prosecute. Because compliance in this part of the world is not a tea party. It's not a walk in the park. So to get compliance, we must have some kind of sanctions, and that act, by the grace of God, that bill, by the grace of God, when passed into law, will be carrying stick round town to ensure that once you default, you face the full wrath of the law.
Now, some people also feel that firefighting, especially in markets, it's common humongous amounts of money, property, all gone aflame. And at the point they say, oh, where was the firefighting agency when this fire broke out? And so they say you're always late at the scene.
Well, the issue of being late to the scene has to do with response time. Professionally, Mr. Shamang, right now in Nigeria, we're not yet there. Although I know there's a PPP that the Controller General is working on.
PPP, define it.
Public-private partnership.
Okay.
That the Federal Fire Service, through the Controller General, is working on. And that PPP has to do with machine-to-machine communication. What that means is that you don't need to even call us if there's a fire on a building that has those gadgets installed. So your regular fire detector, alarm systems will have a chip that can notify us once, there's the level of heat in that building. So with those kind of technology, we are set to say that we can get the call almost immediately. But if not, what we have experienced, in the recent past is that sometimes, Mr. Shamang, fire is going on. People are doing videos, taking selfies. They have not as much as picked up their phone to call the emergency number or to call the Federal Fire Service. It is when we receive that call that our call time starts. So and a lot of times, Mr. Shamang, the Afri Tower fire, we were there in 7 minutes. We received that call at 13:47. 14:37, and we arrived at 13:41. So we're there in 7 minutes. As the case may be. So it depends on when you call us. So when we receive the call, we log in, and then the service is deployed. But before that time, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. In fact, there was an incident I experienced personally, Mr. Shamang. I was going to AYA somewhere in Abuja, and I ran into a trailer that was on fire. But when I got there, and this trailer has started burning for maybe up to 5-6 minutes from my assessment. When I got there, I saw people taking photographs, doing videos. I took out my phone and called the control room, in Gariki, and decided to ask the people taking video if they had as much as called the fire service. Some of them said no. Some of them said, is it my car that is burning? Why should I call fire service? Such response. From the point I called the control room, I was there, their plans turned out and came there. And they made it in 5 minutes, if you understand what I'm saying. So, response times for us. So when people say we came late, a lot of the times, they didn't call us on time. There are other issues or other factors that can make us come late. At least in Nigeria now, we don't have emergency routes or emergency lanes. So we all use the same lane. So we have to blare the siren. But it will interest you that sometimes when the siren, is being blared and we're on transit, people don't give us the right of way. They block us. So that will affect our arrival. There are also issues around traffic in itself. You're coming and then there's a huge traffic. Since we don't have a specialized lane, we may have to, wait to clear the traffic, to be able to assess that point. And then when you talk about market fire, some of our markets are very old, and at the time they were built, considerations were not made to these gigantic machines that we carry around now for firefighting. So that can also be a huge challenge.
And you see trailers also, instead of having their wares right inside their shops, they also display along the road.
In fact, the attachments in the old markets that we have today are more than the original shops. So sometimes maybe the shop is supposed to have an occupancy or shop level of 1,000. The attachment may be 5,000. Every little space is used for trading. That in itself can also, delay our arrival.
So in terms of, let's talk of awareness this time around. To what extent have you penetrated the markets to ensure, look, gentlemen, this thing is not just about the firefighters, It's about you and your goods that you want to say. So what awareness have you been carrying?
Well, I must say clearly that when you talk about the awareness that we carry, the economic hub, if I use the exact word of the Honorable Minister of Interior, that's Dr. Tunji Ojo, he's so particular about the economic hub. And in one of the instances, he said, look, if a private house should go up in flames, at best, you may be counting property of 5 million, 10 million, or 20 million. But if a shop should go up in flames, if the market goes up in flames, it runs into hundreds of millions. Not just that, it may affect people's job, it may affect families, as the case may be. So that's an area that is very particular about. And as to us, knowing that that's the minister's thoughts, a lot of work is going on. We are partnering with major markets across Nigeria, on trainings, enlightenments, campaigns, stakeholder engagements, as the case may be. You know that the new Controller General came into office on the 14th of August. So it's barely a month, but plans are on the way. And in no distant time, we'll be up and about in virtually every major market in Nigeria.
Now, talking about the states, for example, it looks like it's always a federal government thing when it comes to firefighting than involving local government, involving the states. It's like there is no harmony or harmonized way of fighting?
No, when there's fire, there's no distinction between federal fire or state fire or local government fire or private fire.
But you can see that federal government appears to be more
understandably. And so there's a call, and I'm using this medium to call the governors. Your Excellencies, you need to invest in firefighting. I'm also using this opportunity to call on the local governments. Federal fire service or fire service in Nigeria is not on the exclusive list. So every state government, every local government can set up a fire station. We can only help you, regulate and make sure that the right things are done. But as of today, I can tell you that because of the enormous resources that is required for firefighting, it's the federal that is, doing majority, because most of the states, they either have very epileptic fire service or there's none in existence at all, as the case may be, and the federal government alone cannot do it. So you are right. When you go out there, you see more of the federal, than the states or the local government. But there's a call for that, and we hope that they will heed this clarion call.
Some people have been wondering, is it not possible, for example, private agencies, private organizations, to a kind of, the way they're doing the police trust fund, to also do some commitments to the federal fire service?
Oh, we don't mind. And I hope that in the nearest, in no distant time, Mr. Shamang, we should be there. Like I said earlier when we started this program, I said firefighting is one of government social corporate responsibility for her citizens. When we come to fight fire, enormous resources is deployed, and we don't give people bills for coming out to fight fire in there. In fact, they just thank you and then we go back home. So a lot of resources is being deployed in firefighting, from personnel costs to extinguishing elements, to vehicle, to logistics, to fuel, just name it, So, of course, well-meaning Nigerians are encouraged, corporate Nigeria is encouraged, to turn in the way of supporting, the federal fire service, in whatever way they can. It will interest you to know that the new Controller General who has just been appointed, Samuel Adeyemi Olumudi. Do you know, Mr. Shamang, that a grand reception was planned for him by his friends, to congratulate him for the appointment? He turned it down and asked that all the resources meant for that grand reception be used to provide welfare for his personnel. So the friends now went out there and got mattresses, got boots, got tunic, got helmets, got torchlights, got umbrellas, amongst others, and donated it to the operational arm of the service. So, I mean, we are open to such support from well-meaning Nigerians, from corporate Nigerians, from foundations and NGOs that, are advocating for, for disaster management. We are there and we are willing and available to assess such helps.
Looks like the Controller General is thinking in tandem with the First Lady, Senator Oluremi Tinubu, who on her birthday said, look, don't congratulate me via TV, airtime, radio, space on newspapers. The amount sent to this account, let's construct the National Library. And as we are talking, she raised over 20 billion naira.
Wow.
Well, we hope it goes at that way. But tell me this, why is it that at the point, some people, instead of appreciating what the fire service is doing, at the point you see that, some will want to boo, some will want to even loot, some will want to rather even stone personnel.
It's very unfortunate. It's a very unfortunate circumstance. I'll tell you that it's more out of arrogance, ignorance, and some level of, because we are on national TV, but it's saddening that people, human beings with blood in their body, sometimes even use machetes on firemen who came out to carry out their mandates, who are risking their life to come and rescue or put out a fire. They have blood, they have families, but they came out, they got the clarion call, an emergency call, they jump into their plants, and on arrival, thugs are booing them, stoning them, maybe because they want to loot. Sometimes they say they came late, and it's of no fault of theirs. So please, I think that it is high time that Nigerians know that firemen are not robots. Neither are they AI. They are human beings with blood in their vessels who have come, to help. So we'll rather that you commend them than booing them or stoning them or even fighting them.
Now let's look at distance and equipment. You are here and you are called a distance of 30, 40 kilometers to reach there. You reach there, okay, the fire is on, now you run short of water. What happens in a situation of that nature?
Okay, when you talk about that, at the Federal Fire Service, we have tried a lot to mitigate that issue. Most people will say, their plans came, they ran short of water. Their plans is not just carrying water. It's carrying extinguishing elements. So there may be water, there may be foam compound of different variety. So it's not like every tank you see or appliance that you see turning out to fire, that tank, because it's a tank, is water is carrying. No. However, when we turn out for that kind of fire, we also hope that there will be hydrants nearby. But some of the initiative we have taken is to also have water tenders. Water tenders. Water tenders are also big trucks that can carry, tons of water and extinguishing element to support their plants. So as their plants is turning out, we are getting feedback. We call it assistant message. That message is also sent out. So another fire station is turning out, or if they know that, extinguishing element may be a challenge, they may not be able to go back and refuel, then water tenders are also deployed, to those places.
Well, because you've always been talking about time, we want to conclude here, but not without this one. If you check some other bigger democracies, they begin to use helicopters and they release some sprays from up there in the sky, and especially those fighting bushfires. So, are we already focusing on issues of this nature?
Yes. We've been having conversation with the Nigerian Air Force. I know that conversation started under the former Acting Controller General Karibu Perez Samson. We had a visit to the then Chief of Naval Staff. where the conversation was around if you have aircraft that you're no longer using to engage, firefighters may have need of them. So that kind of conversation is going. But again, funds, what you're talking about is big deployment of resources. So we hope that, we get what we need to do that. But that being said, a lot is going on, a lot of thinking is going on within and outside the box to ensure that we have a federal fire service that is in tandem with the age that we are in, and I must use this opportunity to call on, again, corporate Nigeria, well-meaning Nigerians, senators. You give an example, if it's 30, 40 kilometers, that's not good enough to have one fire station 30, 40 kilometers away from an incident. So we hope that the senators, the House of Rep members, the local government chairman, and all of that will begin to set up, they can approach us at the Federal Fire Service, set up fire post, fire station, and then we'll deploy our men so that we can bring, fire post and fire station closer and closer to the people.
So, your vision for this firefighting in Nigeria, what will make me call you? Because there is fire. Because I depend on you. What really, how dependable would that be?
Federal Fire Service is very dependable. The issue is proximity to fire station. We're very dependable, and Samuel Adeyemi Olumudi, the new Controller General, has given marching orders. But beyond orders, he has heavily motivated his men. I just give you an example of the corporate social responsibility that came from his friends. So we have a workforce that is now motivated, whose morale is very high, and they are ready to work. So if you have fire and it's beyond the incipient stage where you cannot tackle, please call the Federal Fire Service. And I can assure you that we'll be there.
And just when we called you, you entered here and started making observations.
Of course.
Share with us, what do you observe?
We are trained, to audit emergency situations. So when you get into a building, we want to see where is the emergency exit, is it designated? Do they have one? You want to see whether the studio has sprinklers, dredgers. You want to see whether the TV station or the hotel, as the case may be, has the smoke detectors, have fire alarm system. Okay, give you an example. If somebody goes to bed, a lot of times, what can wake that person up in case of fire should be the fire alarm or the smoke detector. If those things are not there, the person may wake up when the fire has completely engulfed his or her room. So that's why when we come, we looked out for these things, and I pointed them out to you.
So, these fire detectors, the smoke detectors, how readily are they available?
They're very available, they're very affordable, they're battery-based, they're everywhere. In fact, they're everywhere, and they're very cheap.
And it is here that we have to end this edition of the program. We've been looking at safety. We look at how people should react. Stay calm while waiting to be rescued. Stay calm even when the fire is there. Above all, support the Federal Fire Service to ensure that your life, your property, everybody is safe. I want to thank you, Barrister Paul Abraham, for coming to our studio.
It's my pleasure to be here, Mr. Shamang.
My name is Ben Shamang, like he has said. Again, we are still on Third Eye Africa TV. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.